At 2 in the morning, a 71-year-old man was wheeled into my emergency department with a broken hip. He'd fallen getting up to use the bathroom, something he had done 10,000 times before without a second thought. But here is what the X-ray could not show me. His legs did not fail that night. They had been quietly starving for 15 years. And nobody, not one of the doctors he'd seen, had ever told him that his legs were hungry for something specific. If you are over 60 and the stairs feel heavier than they used to, and getting out of a low chair takes a small push off the armrest that it never used to take, I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes. Because what is happening in your legs is not simply age. It is something you can change, starting with your very next meal. I've spent years in emergency medicine, and I will tell you plainly, the fall is almost never the beginning of the story. By the time someone lands on my table with a fractured hip, the weakness that caused it has been building for a decade or more, silently, without pain, without any dramatic warning sign. And that is the cruel part. Muscle loss does not hurt. It does not ache the way a bad knee aches. It just quietly takes things from you, one small ability at a time, until one ordinary movement finally costs you everything. Here's the number that stopped me cold the first time I read it. Researchers publishing in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society found that adults over 65 with significant lower body weakness had a 72% higher risk of losing their independence within 5 years. Not just falls, loss of the ability to live in their own home. 72%. That is nearly 3 out of 4 people who might have changed the outcome if someone had simply told them what we are about to talk about. And there is a second measurement that matters even more, because it predicts not just falls, but how long you live. In one of the largest studies of its kind, the Prospective Urban-Rural Epidemiology Study, published in The Lancet, researchers found that grip strength was a stronger predictor of death than blood pressure. For every roughly 5-kilogram drop in how hard you can squeeze, the risk of dying from any cause rose about 16%. Let that land for a moment. How hard you can grip a jar lid tells us more about your future than the number on your blood pressure cuff. Muscle is not vanity. Muscle is survival tissue. So here is what I am giving you today. 6 specific foods, ranked from good to genuinely transformational, that rebuild the muscle in your legs, calm the inflammation quietly eating away at it, and restore the steadiness you may have already started to grieve. We are counting down from 6 to 1, and the number 1 food is something you were very likely told to avoid, something Harvard researchers now consider one of the most muscle-protective compounds we have for anyone over 60. I am saving it for last because once you understand it, you will never read a grocery label the same way again. But before the food, I want to give you something you can do the moment this video ends, because information you cannot measure is information you will forget. This is a test that physical therapists across the country use, and the CDC includes it in its National Falls Prevention Program. Sit in a firm kitchen chair. Cross your arms over your chest so you cannot cheat by pushing. Now stand all the way up and sit all the way down, as many times as you can in 30 seconds. Count them. If you are in your 60s and you get fewer than about 12, or in your 70s and fewer than about 10, your legs are telling you something, quietly, before they ever make you fall. Write your number down. In a few weeks of eating the way I am about to describe, do it again. That number is your legs talking to you. Learn to listen to it. And there's a second one, for your grip. Because remember, that squeeze predicts your future better than almost anything else we measure. You do not need a fancy device. Take a full grocery bag in each hand and see how far you can carry them before you have to set them down. Or notice whether opening a new jar has quietly become a 2-hands-ask-for-help job. Losing your grip and losing your legs are the same story told in 2 places, because it is one body-wide loss of muscle, not a local problem with your knees. Track both. They will move together and they will improve together. Now, let's begin the countdown. Coming in at number 6, and this one still surprises almost everyone I say it to. Eggs. I know the egg has been on trial your entire adult life. They raise your cholesterol, they clog your arteries, put them down, and back away slowly. And I understand why you believe that, because it was said with great confidence for 40 years. But I'm here to tell you, with the current weight of nutritional science behind me, that for most adults over 60, avoiding eggs did far more harm than the eggs ever could. Here is what an egg actually does for an aging leg. The egg is one of the most complete sources of leucine on the planet. Leucine is an amino acid, and if that word means nothing to you, picture the ignition key in a car. You can have a full tank of fuel, a good engine, everything ready, but nothing happens until the key turns. Leucine is the key that turns on muscle building. It starts the biological process called muscle protein synthesis, by which your body actually repairs and rebuilds the muscle in your legs. Now here is the part that matters more after 60 than at any other point in your life. As we age, our muscles develop what scientists call anabolic resistance. In plain terms, the muscle gets stubborn. It stops answering the phone when protein calls. A young man can eat a small amount of protein and his muscles respond eagerly. An older woman can eat the exact same amount and her muscles barely stir. Same food, weaker signal. So you have to turn the key harder. Research now points to a specific threshold. To reliably flip that switch in an older body, a meal needs roughly 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine, which usually means about 25 to 30 grams of real protein in one sitting, not spread thinly across the day. 2 large eggs give you a meaningful head start, and paired with a little more protein at that same meal, you cross the line that actually wakes the muscle up. This is where most older adults go wrong without ever knowing it, and it has nothing to do with how much protein they eat in a day. It is the timing. A slice of toast at breakfast, a small salad at lunch, and then most of the day's protein piled onto dinner. The total looks fine on paper, but the muscle only rebuilds when a single meal crosses that threshold, so 2 of those 3 meals did nothing for your legs at all. The fix is almost free. Aim for a real anchor of protein, that 25 to 30 grams, at each of your 3 meals, not stacked at the end of the day. Spread it, and you turn the key 3 times instead of once. And here's what makes the egg special beyond leucine. The yolk. The very part you were told to throw in the trash carries choline, vitamin D, and a compound that helps keep the outer wall of your muscle cells intact so they can hold on to the nutrients they need to contract and recover. Throwing the yolk away to keep the white is like buying a car and leaving the engine at the dealership. You kept the shell and discarded the machine. I think of a patient I'll call Carol, 73, a retired librarian from Boise. She came to me after her second fall in 6 months, frightened of her own back steps. For over a decade, she had eaten a strict, low-fat diet and hadn't touched a whole egg, on advice she'd been given long ago. We changed one thing first. 2 to 3 whole eggs in the morning, cooked gently, with a little olive oil, which we will come back to. 8 weeks later, she told me she had climbed her own stairs without gripping the railing for the first time in 2 years. That is not magic. That is leucine, choline, and vitamin D doing exactly what the biology says they should. So the action here is simple. Eat 2 to 3 whole eggs in the morning, cooked with gentle heat, alongside a little healthy fat to help you absorb the vitamins in the yolk. And stop pouring the yolk down the sink. You are throwing away the engine. Which brings us to number 5, and this one is about a fire you cannot feel. Wild-caught salmon. If your legs feel heavy in the morning, if they cramp at night, if they ache before you have even done anything, there's a very good chance that low-grade, invisible inflammation is smoldering inside your muscle tissue while you sleep. And wild salmon is one of the most powerful natural firefighters we have. The active compounds are the omega-3 fats, EPA and DHA. Before your eyes glaze at the letters, let me show you what they do. Picture the inflammation in an aging muscle like a slow forest fire. Not a blaze, just a low, constant burn. And over years it chars everything around it. The muscle fibers, the connective tissue, even the nerve wiring that carries the signal from your brain down to your legs telling them to move. EPA and DHA are the water-dropping aircraft. They do not just cool the fire, they chemically shut down the inflammatory messengers, the prostaglandins and cytokines your body makes in rising amounts after 60. In a controlled study out of the University of Aberdeen, older adults given the omega-3 equivalent of about 3 salmon servings a week showed a 22% jump in their muscle-building response compared to those who didn't. 22%. From a fish. Not a powder, not a pill. A fish. Salmon carries a second gift almost no one mentions. It is one of the very few foods that delivers real vitamin D3, the active form your skin largely stops making as you get older. And here is where I have to be honest with you, because this is exactly the kind of half-truth that costs people their footing. You have probably heard that vitamin D prevents falls, so you bought the pills. But a very large, careful trial published in the New England Journal of Medicine, the VITAL trial, followed more than 25,000 adults and found that vitamin D supplements on their own did not reduce fractures or falls in the general older population. Read that again because it is important. The pill alone did not save anyone's hip. What actually protects you is a working system, enough protein, enough strength, and yes, enough vitamin D coming in through real food and sunlight, all pulling together. So do not pin your hopes on a capsule. A single serving of wild salmon delivers a substantial share of the vitamin D an older adult needs, wrapped in the protein and the omega-3s that a pill can never give you. One thing matters here. Wild caught, specifically. Farmed salmon carries a very different fat profile and does not deliver the same calming effect. Eat it 2 to 3 times a week and lay it on a bed of dark leafy greens, which is not an accident because those greens are number 4. Number 4. Spinach and dark leafy greens. And this one has an almost mythical reputation among the researchers who study long life. Think of every older person you have ever watched move beautifully, rise from a chair without pushing off, walk without shuffling. I would bet good money that greens were a regular part of their plate. Here is the biology. As we age, our bodies lose much of their ability to recycle a molecule called nitric oxide, which acts like the traffic officer for blood flow in your legs. When nitric oxide falls, your microcirculation, the tiny vessels feeding your thighs and calves, begins to clog with traffic. Nutrients cannot get in, waste cannot get out. The muscle tires faster, recovers slower, and shrinks year by year. Spinach, kale, chard, and arugula are loaded with dietary nitrates, which your body, with the help of friendly bacteria in your own mouth, converts back into that missing nitric oxide. You are using food to rebuild a system that age has been dismantling. Researchers at the Karolinska Institute found that a dose of nitrate roughly equal to a large serving of spinach improved the efficiency of aging muscle by about 19%. The muscle did not get bigger. It simply got better at using the oxygen already arriving, like tuning an old engine so it runs cleaner on the same fuel. And greens carry magnesium, a mineral that a large share of older Americans are quietly short on. Magnesium runs hundreds of reactions in the body, and one of the most important is letting a muscle relax. When your calf seizes at night, when your foot cramps and curls, that is very often a magnesium signal. 1 cup of cooked spinach covers a meaningful part of a day's need. I remember a man I'll call Frank, 70, a retired mechanic from Tulsa, who described his legs as feeling like they were set in concrete every morning. He had taken magnesium pills for years, with little to show for it, which tells you something. Absorption from a whole food often beats absorption from a tablet. We had him eat 2 cups of sautéed spinach a day, cooked in olive oil and garlic. 6 weeks later, the concrete feeling was gone. He was walking for the pure pleasure of it again. Always cook your greens in a quality fat, because it dramatically improves how much of the good part you actually absorb. Let me pause here, because I know some of you are starting to feel the weight of all this, the sense that you are already behind, that the damage is done. So hear me clearly. You do not need perfection here. You are not looking for a flawless diet. You are looking for a direction. Muscle is astonishingly willing to rebuild, well into the 80s, if you simply give it the raw materials. One better meal today genuinely moves the needle. And while I have your attention, let me draw a clear line, because knowing when to just adjust your plate and when to pick up the phone is part of staying safe. If your legs are gradually weaker over months, that is a nutrition and strength problem, and everything in this video is your starting point. Bring your chair stand number to your next regular doctor's visit. But if weakness comes on suddenly, over hours or days, if one leg is weak and the other is not, if it comes with slurred speech, a drooping face, numbness, or a bad new headache, that is not aging and it is not food. That is a same-day emergency. Call 911. Do not drive yourself. And if you have had 2 or more falls in the past year, or a fall that made you afraid, do not wait for the annual physical. Call your primary care doctor and ask to be checked this month. Falls are the leading cause of injury death in older Americans, and the CDC reports 1 in 4 adults over 65 falls every single year. That is not said to frighten you. It is said so you know that catching this early is the entire game. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, because I hear it in my exam room all the time. This sounds like an expensive, complicated supplement routine. It is the opposite. Everything on this list is ordinary food from an ordinary store, and the science keeps finding that the whole food beats the pill, the way real spinach beat Frank's magnesium tablets, and real salmon beats the vitamin D capsule that did nothing in that big trial. You are not buying anything new. You are just aiming the grocery money you already spend at your legs. And while we are being honest, let me rank the quiet thieves too, because knowing what is draining your legs matters as much as knowing what feeds them. The biggest, by far, is simply not eating enough protein at each meal. The timing mistake we just covered. Second is sitting for hours unbroken, because muscle you do not use, you lose faster after 60 than at any other age, and no food fully outruns a chair. Third is regular alcohol, which quietly blocks the very muscle-building switch we are trying to flip. You do not have to be perfect on any of these, but if you fix the food and never get out of the recliner, the food is fighting with one hand tied. Now, back to the countdown, and we are into elite territory. Number 3, Greek yogurt. Most people file yogurt under light snack, the thing you eat when you are being good. What most people do not realize is that plain, full-fat Greek yogurt is one of the most powerful muscle-building tools available to an older body, and almost nobody uses it that way. 1 cup gives you roughly 17 to 20 grams of high-quality protein, and crucially, it carries the 3 branched-chain amino acids, including our friend leucine, in a form your muscle absorbs with remarkable ease. Unlike many plant proteins, which are incomplete and need to be combined to work fully, the protein in Greek yogurt goes straight to where your legs need it. It does not take the scenic route. But here is what truly lifts yogurt above a simple protein. It carries live cultures that feed something researchers now call the gut-muscle axis. This is newer science, and the findings are striking. Work from the University of California, Davis found that older adults with healthier gut bacteria had more lean muscle, stronger legs, and faster recovery. The gut, it turns out, is not just digesting your food. It is deciding how much of that food your muscles are even allowed to use. After 65, that inner ecosystem tends to thin out and grow less efficient, and probiotic foods like yogurt help restock it, like refilling the shelves of a library that has been quietly losing its books. The fuller the shelves, the more your body can find what it needs. For the most benefit, eat your yogurt within about half an hour to 45 minutes of any movement, even a short walk. That is your open window, when muscle is most eager for protein. And always choose plain, full fat. The low-fat versions usually swap the fat for added sugar, which pours fuel on the very inflammation we are working to put out. Which brings us to number 2, and I promised you early on that one of the top foods would surprise you. This is it. Beets. I can see the skepticism, because beets are not what comes to mind when you picture strong legs. But the research here is so solid that serious sports medicine programs now use beet compounds in real recovery protocols. Remember the nitrates in spinach? Beets carry them at 3 to 4 times the concentration, gram for gram, of any leafy green. One medium beet delivers a large dose of dietary nitrate, and when it reaches the oxygen-starved environment of working muscle, it converts into nitric oxide with striking efficiency, opening the blood vessels and flooding your legs with oxygen and fuel in a way aging vessels can no longer manage alone. And here is the part that should get every one of you to sit up. A study at Wake Forest University found that older adults who drank beet juice before moderate exercise showed a significant increase in blood flow to the regions of the brain that control movement. Let me say that plainly. The beet did not just help their legs. It helped the brain steer their legs. For anyone worried about balance, about coordination, about that fraying connection between mind and muscle that comes with age, that is enormous. Beets also carry betaine, a compound that lowers homocysteine, a marker in the blood that, when elevated, is tied to faster muscle loss and damaged mitochondria, the little power plants inside your muscle cells. When those power plants fail, your legs run like a car with a dying battery, turning over slower and slower. I see this pattern constantly. A person is told, sometimes by more than one doctor, that their weakness and fatigue are simply part of getting old, and they walk out with a cane and no plan. Sometimes the missing piece really is this small, a few roasted beets a few times a week and a short daily walk. To use them well, roast beets at 400 degrees for about 45 minutes to concentrate the nitrates, or blend them raw into a smoothie with a squeeze of citrus, since the vitamin C boosts the conversion. Do not boil them for a long time because the good part leaches out into the water. Pair beets with a lean protein, and you have one of the best pre-walk meals an aging body can eat. And now, number 1. The food I mentioned at the very start. The one Harvard researchers consider among the most muscle-protective compounds we have for anyone over 60. The one that has been demonized, avoided, and stripped out of millions of older people's diets on the strength of science that turned out to be wrong. Number 1 is extra virgin olive oil. I know some of you expected a protein, or some exotic powder. Stay with me, because understanding this will change how you think about fat for the rest of your life. Extra virgin olive oil carries a compound called oleocanthal. Oleocanthal is a natural plant polyphenol that acts in your body almost exactly like ibuprofen. The same mechanism. It quiets the very same inflammatory enzymes called COX-1 and COX-2 that prescription anti-inflammatories target, but without the stomach bleeding, the kidney strain, and the heart risk that come with taking those drugs for years. For older adults, who are handed anti-inflammatories for aching joints and muscles more than any other group, that is not a small footnote. That is a different way to fight the same fire. But the muscle benefit goes further. A landmark study from the University of Athens followed 840 adults over 65 for 3 years. Those who used at least 4 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil a day had a 37% lower rate of sarcopenia, the medical term for the steady involuntary loss of muscle that begins around 40 and accelerates hard after 60. This is now recognized as a genuine disease with its own diagnostic code, not just a fact of life. 37% lower from olive oil. Here is the mechanism Harvard found most compelling. The polyphenols in real olive oil appear to flip on the mTOR pathway, the master switch for muscle building, the same switch that leucine and exercise turn on. But olive oil turns it independently. It does not wait for a workout. After 70, your body loses a large share of its sensitivity on that switch, which is why muscle gets so much harder to hold. And olive oil is one of the few foods that seems to partly restore it, like turning the sensitivity back up on a hearing aid that had slowly been dialed down until the muscle could barely hear the signal to grow. There is also a mitochondrial angle. A compound in olive oil called hydroxytyrosol protects the DNA inside your muscles' power plants from damage. As we age, that DNA accumulates errors, like a document photocopied too many times until the instructions blur, and the muscle produces less and less energy. Hydroxytyrosol helps slow that blurring. I'll tell you about a man I'll call Walter, 80, a retired train conductor from Scranton, who could not walk 2 blocks without stopping to rest. His diet was, in his words, spotless. Skinless chicken, dry toast, nothing with any fat in it at all. A habit he'd held for 30 years on the rules of his era. We added 4 tablespoons of good extra virgin olive oil a day, 2 over his morning eggs, 2 over his vegetables at lunch, and changed nothing else for a month. At 6 weeks, he walked 4 blocks without stopping. At 3 months, he was back on his bicycle. He mailed me a photo from the finish of a 2-mile charity walk, and it is on my office wall. For real use, 4 tablespoons a day is the evidence-based target. Use it as your everyday cooking fat over low to medium heat, and pour it generously over vegetables, eggs, fish, and beans. Notice something. Eggs, salmon, spinach, all already on this list, all better absorbed with fat. That is not a coincidence. These 6 foods are a system. Together they do far more than any one of them alone. One last thing. Buy olive oil in a dark glass bottle from a real producer, and look for a harvest date, not just an expiration date, because the polyphenols fade with time and light. Fresh olive oil is medicine. Old, clear-bottled, bargain shelf oil is just fat. So let me bring this all the way home, because I want you to leave not just informed, but genuinely ready to act. Here is the whole video compressed into one pattern you can carry in your head. Your legs are not failing because you are old. They are failing because they are starving. For protein, for the trigger that wakes the muscle, for the fats that quiet the fire, and for the nitrates that open the pipes. Feed them, and they answer. If you remember nothing else, remember this order for a single strong day. Start the morning with whole eggs and olive oil. Build one meal around wild salmon or Greek yogurt, so you cross that protein line in one sitting. Fill half your plate with dark greens and a few beets. Finish with a short walk. That is it. That is a day that rebuilds instead of a day that erodes. And measure it. Do your chair stand test today and write the number down. That number is your legs speaking to you in a language you can finally understand. And in a few weeks, it will tell you whether they are answering. If it climbs, you have proof. If it does not, you have a specific reason to talk with your doctor. Being the one who waits in the car, who takes the elevator while everyone else takes the stairs, who says no to the grandchild tugging you toward the yard because you are quietly unsure your legs will cooperate, none of that is written into your biology. It is the downstream result of a plate that was never told what your muscle needs, and of advice given with good intentions that turned out to be wrong. And it is never too late. And I do not say that as encouragement. I say it as a clinical fact. Muscle keeps its ability to grow and repair into the 9th decade of life. The body wants to rebuild. It is simply waiting for the raw materials. Whole eggs, wild salmon, a bowl of spinach, a cup of Greek yogurt, a couple of roasted beets, and the finest olive oil you can find. Ordinary things, on every grocery shelf, with the power to hand you back your own 2 legs. So here is your one small step, and I only want one, because 1 you will actually do beats 10 you will not. At your very next meal, add whole eggs and a real drizzle of olive oil, and do your chair stand test before you eat. That is the whole assignment. Then come back and tell me your number and how your legs have been feeling. Because the people who catch this early are almost always the ones who do best, and your story may be the reason someone else finds this and changes course before their 2 in the morning ever comes. Eat well, move a little every day, and do not for 1 second believe your best years are behind you. They are waiting for you to walk into them.